Welcome to the Picky Girl Travels podcast, the show for Black women who want more out of life and to live it as they see fit. The message here is all about defying convention, embracing adventure, and regretting absolutely nothing. I am your host, Adelia Borishade of PickyGirlTravelsTheWorld.com. Now, if you see my guest today, she might look a little familiar to you, especially if you watch my YouTube channel. Her name is Ivana Robinson. She was a previous guest in one of my live videos, but the reason she's here today is because she is a life and leadership coach who helps mid-career women ditch the shoulds and design a life on their own terms. So you can see right there why she absolutely had to come and be a guest on the podcast. So welcome to you again. So let's talk about that. You are a life and leadership coach.
Yeah, I am. I'm sure that, what is coaching? What does that mean?
Yeah. Because here's the thing, I hear that title and there are some things that come to mind, but I don't know if that's actually what it is that you do.
Yeah. So to that point, there's a lot of different types of coaching. People call themselves a lot of things. The International Coaching Federation kind of defines coaching as a partnership in a thought-provoking creative process. So the goal that I have is to help people kind of unlock that unconscious, right? We all have the things that we're thinking about internally that maybe we're afraid to do, or maybe we don't know why we do them. We're just operating kind of on default a lot of the time. And so as a coach, I get to help you, kind of question some of those things, figure out what is actually serving you, what isn't, how can we make changes so that everything that you do, how your behaviors, your thought processes, everything is in service of you, your values, your dreams, all of that. And I kind of get to be just like an independent third party. Whereas when you share, your ideas, your dreams with friends or family, there's an emotional tie there, right? You say you want to quit your job and they're like, oh my God, you can't do that. Why? Whereas I get to just be here, right? I don't care if you quit your job or not. That does not affect me. So your agenda is my agenda. Let's figure out, how we can make that work for you or whatever else needs to be put into place.
I may be off base here, but this sounds a little bit like what therapists do.
It's similar. Obviously not a licensed professional. It's similar in that it is very much a lot of asking questions, sort of picking up on things that are not being said. But as a coach, I am very much focused on the right now moving forward. So whatever happened, your experiences are valid and that's great, but how can we make tomorrow different?
Okay. As somebody who spent a little time in therapy, a lot of it focused on what already happened. And how that was causing my issues today. Okay, so I can see the difference there. Now, is this being a coach? I don't want to say, is this your first job or your first career? Because I don't like the vibe of that question. But this is not what you initially set out to do, is it?
No, out of college, I worked in IT compliance consulting with Deloitte, spent 8 years working there. And coaching has always been on the horizon for me. It was always the joke with my friends that I'm going to be a coach. It's going to be my second career. I think there was an element of thinking I was too young. People aren't going to talk to me or believe in me in being a coach. But throughout my career in consulting, that was the part of my job that I loved, was getting to kind of coach up my teams, help them figure out, what it is that they were actually interested in, help them be better leaders and advocate for themselves in the workplace. Recruiting, mentoring also kind of fell into those buckets. And as I was moving up the ladder, I realized, oh, I'm not going to be able to do as much of this. It's going to be a lot more client focused. And so that's when I decided to make a transition into coaching more formally and full time.
That's interesting that you said you thought you might need to be older.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that was my own limiting belief of like, I am a child. Why would someone listen to me? But in reality, people were already listening to me and coming to me to hold that space for them. So it was being able to just kind of like lean into that. I went and got certified so that I could feel like I have more tools to be able to really help people in different ways.
That bit of your story kind of mirrors my own. I had a lot of angst becoming a teacher because the pay is shit. There is no respect and you work too fucking hard. However, I was always the person who explained things, who showed people how to do stuff. If you need to know something, go ask Adelia. So it seems like, well, of course, that's what I would do. And then when I was looking for what to do, because teaching was slowly killing me, I kind of had to come to terms with, you are an educator. Maybe you just don't work in a school anymore, but I still do that. So no, I see some of me in that there. Okay, so you are a certified life coach?
My official certification is certified professional coach, but yes, it is in life coaching in general.
Okay. And from what you've described to me, it sounds like everybody needs one of these. Because, okay, because here's the thing. With the work that I do and with my platform, I see a lot of women who are dealing with, well, this is a thing I want to do. And I shared it with my family and I shared it with my friends. And there is no support for me. Like, they're not, like, they shut me down immediately. So it's like, well, what? And I can't say I faced that myself, but if I had, like, it never occurred to me that there are professionals that can act as your sounding board, who can help you figure out how to get from point A to point B. So I'm kind of now thinking, shoot, maybe everybody needs a coach.
You're not wrong. I do think that everyone can benefit from coaching, different parts of our lives for sure. Being coachable or being ready to be coached is a different story.
Okay.
That is something, I mean, obviously in my personal practice, if you are seeking me out, chances are you are ready for some sort of change. You're ready to kind of be pushed. I also do some contract coaching for companies who outsource coaches, more on the professional side. And if your company is just like, put you into this program, those are people who are not always on board or have bought in, from jump. So it can sometimes take a little more work, a little more time to get them on board. And some people are just not. So.
Okay. So somebody's watching this, because if they're watching this podcast or they're listening to this podcast, they are looking for ways to live life on their terms. Maybe something we've said so far has gotten them to thinking, maybe I ought to find a coach. How do you go about that? Where do you start? What should you look for? Like, I ask all of I spit all those questions at you because I'm kind of like against just finding randos on the street and handing them your money, so.
Yeah. Because that is something, is legally anybody can be a coach. It's not, something like, there are people who are certified, there are governing bodies, but legally, like, I could have just said I was a coach and like just been out here. And not to say that there aren't completely capable and qualified coaches who are not certified. But I think being certified gives me, one, I am tied to a set of ethics to be using to make sure that I am keeping that line, especially between therapy and coaching, right? I am not a licensed professional, mental health professional. So making sure that I'm aware of what those lines are. So if there is additional help that someone needs that I should not be providing, I can refer them appropriately and identify those things. And making sure, obviously there's confidentiality and just maintaining sort of that a certain level of independence, right? I am friendly, but I am not your friend, right? If you have hired me as a coach. So being clear on sort of what those boundaries are. So I would say ask around, start with see who you know. I think people are often surprised to know that certain people have worked with coaches. So put it out there in your networks that you're looking. And then I would also use the International Coaching Federation. If someone is certified, there is a database that you can search for that. If you are in any Facebook groups, I think particularly like Black women Facebook groups, we tend to be more into, personal and professional development. So definitely put that question out there, because even if they don't know somebody, they probably know somebody who knows somebody, or can put that out into their circles to help you find at least some people to interview, to look into, as opposed to just, you can Google, but that might give you a whole lot of stuff.
Okay. Now, going backtrack a little bit, you said that, as you were moving up the corporate ladder, you found that the work that you enjoyed the most was more in the coaching vein, and that you would be doing less and less of that. So you left?
I did. I quit my job right before the pandemic hit. I loved being at Deloitte. I had a great support system there, but I was not in love with the job that I was doing. And transitioning internally to be a coach at Deloitte was just not going to happen on my timeline.
Okay.
And so I needed to go out and figure out how to do this on my own.
Now, this might be me being a little too nosy, but this is something I know I struggled with, and I would bet that people listening to this have kind of been here too. Did you kind of feel some kind of way about, I'm talking about quitting this good job with this good paycheck? Because you said you were like, what you enjoy doing. And for me, what you enjoy doing and getting paid were not necessarily one and the same, at least for the first part of my life. Things are different now, but back then, not so much.
I think that is definitely what kept me from quitting sooner, of feeling like I need to have a solid plan. I need to have another job I'm moving into. I need to have everything figured out if I'm going to quit this job. But then I realized, one, the reason I don't have time to figure all these things out is because of this full-time job. That's not going to work. Also, at the time, I had recently moved back to Colorado, where my family is. I was living with my best friend. So I was not paying a full DC rent that I had been doing before. So I was like, okay, I can quit my job. I'm here with support. I will not be homeless and hungry. So I can take some time to figure this out. And also knowing that I was leaving Deloitte on good terms, that I was like, if things go terribly wrong, I will just go back there.
There being a global pandemic.
Right. I was like, it'll be fine. My people there are my people, regardless of me being at Deloitte. And that has proven very true. And yeah, I think I'm not going to say it was an easy decision, but it was a necessary one for sure.
And how did you end up here in Mexico?
Yeah, I have wanted to be in Mexico for a good 7 years. I came for a birthday and, visited Mexico City. And I was like, I think I could live here. But you always think that on vacation. So I came back a few more times and I'm like, no, I could actually live here. And so it took a few years of me trying to figure out how to do that with Deloitte. Ended up in Belgium for 2 years, not Mexico. And so part of me quitting my job, I had the plan of I'm going to go to Mexico and I'm going to figure this out. But then the pandemic hit, so I stayed in Colorado for a little while longer and finally was like, look, I just have to do this because if I don't do it now, it's never going to happen. So last year, I finally made the push and moved down here officially.
I think what stands out to me in hearing how you've made some of these decisions, you know, moving away from the IT consulting, your move to Mexico, it's about the things that matter to you. It's about the things that are important, which I wholly support. Like we are all about that here.
Yeah.
But I am not going to act like that is a very easy thing to do, especially within the confines of the US system. So
yeah.
I want to spend some time talking about that because that is no small feat, I don't think.
No. It's interesting because there's sometimes I'm like, I don't know how I ended up like this with such a rebellious spirit in certain ways. Because while I was very much raised by my mother to be independent, to, seek out new opportunities, I don't think that she had it in her mind that, I would leave Colorado and like not come back for 10 years or be traveling the world or living in other countries. I don't think that was the level that she thought I would, kind of end up at, right? Like I'm still the only girl. So like the idea that I'm supposed to like take care of the family, I think was still there a little bit. And for whatever reason, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Don't count on me for that. But yeah, I think I have learned that I have to put myself and my values first in order for me to be able to show up in all parts of my life as my best self. And that serves everyone around me, right? Like if I'm happy and I'm good with me and I'm fulfilled, then the relationships I have, the people around me, like those things are also going to thrive.
That is a word right there. Like that little sis, I'm gonna have to pull that out because that is the perfect sound bite. So let's talk about that. Centering your core values, it helps you be your best self, therefore helps you be there and be for other people. Like, whoa, that's deep, that's profound. But how do you know what your core values are?
Yeah. So this is something that with most of my clients, I start off with is doing a values assessment to just kind of figure out, right, like what are the qualities that are important to us to uphold? Trying to narrow those things down to like 2 or 3 because we like to think that everything is important, but yet everything just can't be important, right? And not just figuring out, I guess, what it is that we would say are our values, but let's think about like how are we actually putting those into action? Because in a lot of cases, if you are feeling unhappy or lost or stuck even, something is in conflict with your values. Or there's even a possibility that those values are not your own, because fear-based values versus conscious-based values, right? Conscious-based, this is something I choose. This is, I choose to value achievement because it makes me feel good to set a goal and achieve it, is very different than I have to or I should value achievement because if not, I'll be a failure. Both are motivating, but the outcome or the way in which you feel about it is generally going to be different.
like all this stuff is clicking in my brain now. Like hearing you say it that way, like that if when you feel stuck or you're feeling unhappy, that there's a conflict. And that is so, I'm thinking about my own examples, my own experience. And I'm like, yeah, man, that is so true.
Yeah. So that's very much, I think an important thing to figure out for ourselves. If you were to ask me, my top core values are freedom and connection. All right. Everything that I do, everything that is important to me kind of feeds into one of those. And I recently did my own little activity just to, reevaluate. I'm here now. Let's see how things have changed. If they have, they had not really. But I asked a couple of my friends, what would you say my top values are? And while they may not have said, those specific words, it was adventure, community, independence, friendship, like things that very much tie to those. And for me, that was a great sign that I'm not just saying freedom and connection are my values, but other people can see that in how I am living, in my actions, and, how I think about things.
So how long, like, okay, if you're working with a woman, and do you coach men?
I do now, both on the contracting side, and then more recently, I have had a few male colleagues and acquaintances reach out to me to be like, "Hey, I need help. You seem like the person to help me, but I don't actually know if you coach men." And I'm like, well, why not? I feel like if this is happening more than once, I can give it a shot and see how we feel about it. So I do coach men and women at this point.
Okay. All right. So if you're coaching someone and y'all are, going through these exercises or what have you to figure out their core values, like how long of a process is this?
So I would say I normally work with someone for roughly 3 months. I usually do 9 sessions, 3 to 4 months, depending on scheduling. The values piece, I would say, is usually maybe 2 to 3 sessions. And that's really just working through not just what they are, but, are they yours? Were these given to you? What is happening there? Right. I think especially as women, particularly Black women, there is a lot that is placed on us from our families, from society. There are expectations of how we are supposed to be in this world. And a lot of my work is helping us to work through that and figure out what are you carrying that is just not yours? What do we need to put down so that you can, continue to run with the things that are yours, the things that empower you, all of that. And then figuring out in terms of values, like, what does that look like in action for you, right? Because I say freedom, you say freedom. Those are not necessarily defined in the same way, right? In the way that we choose to live our lives. So I don't want to place, my ideas about what something is or what it means, because it's your life. You are the expert of you in this situation. So let me help you figure that out. But like, I need to know what it is that you think so that I can kind of guide us along this path in accordance to what is important to you.
I just find this so intriguing and interesting because somebody made a comment on one of the podcast episodes that I talk about myself too much. However, so I'm thinking about that person now as I'm about to talk about myself. However, like I've been through some shit and I struggle to figure out my shit. And I figure somebody else is listening to this who might be in that same place. So that's why, I put my own self out there as an example. But I'm sitting here thinking about like all of I was at that point where I knew something wasn't right. I felt things did not feel right, but I just couldn't figure it out. Like, and the thought that, wow, like if I had known about like coaches, like I could have navigated that, I don't know, sooner, easier.
Yeah.
faster. I don't know, but it would not have been like the thing that was keeping me up at night and making me feel like I was low key, maybe a little crazy, like, because I was having all of these struggles. But when I looked at other people, they seemed to be perfectly content to live their life the way they had been doing it and keep going. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm kind of like, wow, like this is opened a whole new world of possibilities.
Yeah. And that's very much what drives me, is because, you know, living here and knowing the people I know and being here with you, like, if you can figure this part out for you, and maybe it's not moving to Mexico, maybe, you know, maybe it is just getting a new job or doing something different at the company you're already at, or, you know, just reframing things. But like, just figuring that out is a weight lifted, right? And being able to have that conversation, the thing that's been turning around in your head over and over, being able to put that out into the ether in a safe space, in a non-judgmental space, in a space that is yours, but still have someone there to provide feedback, to, you know, kind of maybe get you to say the thing that you've been too afraid to say out loud.
Yeah. That's I don't want to say that's wild, but it's just, I don't know. Maybe it's like revolutionary. I don't know. I don't know. I had a client recently who, you know, we were working together and she decided she didn't want to go back to the office. So she was going to make a formal request to be remote long-term so that she could, you know, travel, sort of be in other places, figure out other things about her life. And she wasn't doing it. She was not. We had made a plan. She was not doing the plan. She was not asking the question, which is fine. Like, I don't care that you do the thing, but there's clearly a reason you're not doing the thing. So let's figure out what that is. And as we were kind of talking about it and talking through it, she finally says, I don't want this job. I really just want to quit. And then she stops and she was like, oh, so that's why I'm not doing all these other things. I don't want this job, whether it's remote or in person. So then we could shift and make a plan for her to be able to quit her job and comfortably not work for, you know, however long. And I don't think she would have had the bravery to say that if we had not been working together, right? To say it and to mean it and to be like, yeah, I have a plan. I'm going to follow up with you in a few weeks. When this is happening, I'm excited, right? You don't necessarily get that talking to a friend, talking to, you know, a loved one in the same way. Now, when I introduced you, I said that you help mid-career women ditch the shoulds. What's a mid-career woman?
That's a good question. I think of a mid-career woman, I would say who's at least been in the working world for at least like, I would say like 4 or 5 years, because not that I haven't worked with people who are earlier, but I think that for me is when the questions start to come up, where that dissatisfaction starts to come up, because I think, at least in my experience, I was so busy just trying to like graduate college and like get a job, right? I was not moving home. So I needed to just get a job. And so the first few years, I think I was just on autopilot and just trying to meet the milestones, right? Those shoulds of, oh, I need to make this amount of money. I need to, you know, have a job. I need to do these things in order to be quote unquote successful. And then once I had reached a certain level of that, I was like, oh, this sucks though. I am not actually happy in this circumstance.
You saying that, and I've had numerous guests on this podcast, and that's a common thing. Like, the life I want is not the one I'm living. And it just made me wonder, are there people who step back and they're like, yes, this is it. This is awesome. I am where I want to be. I'm doing the damn thing. Like, do those people exist?
I mean, there's a lot of us on the planet, so I feel like they have
statistically, they have to.
I think so. I think it is a lot more difficult. I think particularly as women and like Black women, because the rules were not made for us, I think that it is very difficult to be on the quote unquote, path to success and not question it, right? And to be fully, not to say that there aren't highlights, not to say that maybe you figure it out, but I do not think doing things in the sort of quote unquote traditional way leads to happiness for us in most cases. Because like the rules weren't made for us. Like,
no. I would agree with you wholeheartedly. And I think you point out something very important. The rules were not made for us. The system was not designed with us in mind to succeed in it, to benefit from it. The system was designed with us to be a cog to promote and perpetuate other people.
Yeah.
But not us. And I think that if you realize that, if you're a Black woman and you are caught up in the shoulds and you're like, I have checked the box, I have achieved the thing, I should be happy, but I am dissatisfied. And then you feel some guilt about it because, let's be real about like Black excellence and all that. You're supposed to strive, you're supposed to achieve, and magically everything's going to be great. And so you may feel like I should, some guilt behind that dissatisfaction. But when you realize that you're dissatisfied because you're competing in a system that was not designed for you, like you shouldn't feel guilty about that. Not one bit.
Not at all. No, I definitely agree with that. And I think, I feel like guilt and obligation are very much tools that are used to kind of keep us, not even just on that path, but keep us in line. Oh. Right? Like, because we're supposed to be here, we're supposed to be taking care of our families, we're supposed to be of service to everyone else before ourselves. So that guilt can be strong, right? If you are made to feel guilty for not doing that, or not doing that in the way that people think that you should.
Because if it's not strong, you can't be kept in place and keep perpetuating the system. So no, it has to be strong.
Yeah, very much so. But I think for anybody, it is important to figure out what is success for you.
Which
and it could be those traditional things, right? But if you don't ask the question, I think that you can just end up doing, sort of on the hamster wheel. You're just doing the thing to do the thing, and there is no point or purpose behind it.
And I think that comes back full circle to centering your core values and figuring out what those are. Okay, so somebody's listening to this, somebody's watching this on YouTube, and something we said today has got them thinking and pondering, and they're like, maybe I need to hook up with that Ivana.
Yeah.
How would someone go about doing that?
Yeah, you can go to my website, ivanarobinson.com, and you can schedule a free discovery call. It's basically 30 minutes. And it's just a time for us to get to know each other, talk about what it is that you are hoping to get from coaching, and you and I can see if we are a good fit for each other. I didn't really talk about this earlier, but finding not just a coach who kind of focuses on the areas that you are looking to kind of work through, but also one that you vibe with, right? Because like I said, it's an open, non-judgmental space, or at least it should be. And you need to feel open to being vulnerable and, with that person. So finding someone that you connect with is very important.
Okay. Yeah, I think we didn't say anything about that, but that is, that's, I think, important when choosing whatever kind of coaching it is that you're interested in. So like, I do some financial coaching. There are tons of other people that do that who may be a better choice for someone than me. But if, you've seen my stuff or you've talked to me and you're like, okay, we're on the same page, we're on the same wavelength, that's going to make the relationship and the working relationship, like you said, you'll be more comfortable to be vulnerable, because that shit's hard.
Okay. It is very hard. So you have to find someone who, that you can do that with, or else you're not going to get all that you can out of that service and out of that partnership.
Okay. Now, if somebody isn't sure that they are ready for coaching, they're not sure if they want you to be their coach, or they don't know, but they saw you today, they heard you, and they're like, that Ivana knows her shit. I want to connect with her in some way, shape, or form. How might they do that?
Yeah, you can hit me up on Instagram, Ivana Run the World, as well as I have a newsletter, Ivana's 3 Eyes. It comes out on a bi-weekly basis, we'll say, most often. And in that, it's where I like to, interrogate the norms. Why do we do the things that we do? What is coming up? Kind of spark that conversation. I share insights gained from, me coaching other people or my own coaching, things that have come up that I think are really helpful for people to know, to consider in how they lead their lives. And then just some fun, links or whatever I find inspiring or interesting at the time.
Okay.
It's a fun little space.
It's the 3 eyes, like the letter I, or like
an
eyeball?
Ivana's
eye?
3 eyes.
Okay.
As an eyes, because we interrogate the norms, gain insight, and get inspired. So,
okay. And how do they sign up for the newsletter?
They can go to my website, IvanaRobinson.com, and throw in their email address.
Well, thank you, ma'am. I have enjoyed.
Thank you.
I have enjoyed this conversation. Learned some new things I didn't already know, and I really am thinking that the audience is going to feel the same way. When I started this podcast, my number one goal was about helping other Black women live life on their terms by sharing the things that I've done that helped me get to that place, but also connecting the audience with other Black women doing the same thing or who could help you do the same thing. And that is why I really wanted y'all to hear from Ivana, because not only in her work as a coach, could she be key for some of you who need that impartial third party to help you sort out how you want to move, but also she is living that life. She did the thing. She looked at her life. It wasn't resonating with how she wanted to live it, and she made the changes, and look at her now. In the description, I will link to the YouTube interview I did with Ivana, where we talked about her life in Belgium prior to her moving here to Mexico. So I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you if you've subscribed on YouTube, if you have subscribed in the podcatcher that you're listening to us on. Thank you for the reviews. Those of you that have offered the podcast and myself financial support, thank you for that as well. As always, if there is something specific you want us to touch on, reach out to me via social media, or you can use the link in the description to leave a voice note. Otherwise, until next time, y'all.